Okay, so to make a scrunchie, you're going to need the following. So you're going to need some scissors. These could be any kind of scissors. You're going to need some round circular object like a jar, a hair tie, something to measure with, some fabric, it could be an old t-shirt, and something to sew with. Or you could also use hot glue if you don't know how to sew or you don't have any sewing materials, which is totally fine. You can just hot glue it instead of sew it. So I'm going to lay out my t-shirt fabric. In this case it is blue, and I'm going to measure with my measuring tape out the rectangle that I'm going to need to have. So I grabbed a pen to mark down the edges. You could use anything like a marker, and it's going to be 3.5 inches high by 14 inches long. So I'm just marking that right now with my pen. And it's not really showing up, so I'd probably suggest using a permanent marker if you would want. And now I'm cutting out my rectangle. So I'm just cutting the ends on both sides. That is the 3.5 inches long. And now I'm going to take off the measuring tape, and I'm going to cut along that other line right there. Okay, so I just finished cutting out my piece of fabric, which is a long rectangle shape, and now we're just left with this piece. So now I'm going to cut the edge of the t-shirt off. That is the sewed edge. So I'm just going to cut that off right now, just so I have a piece of fabric without that edge. Okay, so now that edge is off, I'm just going to get rid of that. We do not need that at all. And now we're left with our fabric. So now I'm going to bring in my jar, and you can use any kind of jar, pickle jar, gravy jar, whatever you want. And then I'm going to grab my hair tie, and I'm going to wrap my fabric all the way around my jar and connecting the two ends together, even if it's a little bigger than the jar. So now I'm going to take my hair tie, and I'm going to put it around my fabric that is around my jar, and I'm going to put it about halfway in between. So I'm just going to make sure it goes all the way around the fabric, making sure it's evenly distributed and right in the half, all the way around. And just going to, okay, so it looks pretty good now. And now what we're going to do with our fabric is we are going to either hot glue them or sew them down. So if you're going to sew your scrunchie, you're going to need a needle, you're going to need some thread, probably similar to the color of your fabric, and you're going to need this thing if you want to thread your needle. It makes it a lot easier. I'm not sure what it's called, but yeah. So again, you can hot glue, but I am going to now thread my needle with these two instruments, and there we go. I have my knot on the one side, and then on the other I have my needle. So now I'm going to start sewing. So I'm going to take my needle, and I'm going to fold the two halves of my fabric in like that, and then I'm going to put them together, and then that's how I'm going to put in my first stitch to hide the kind of annoying eyesore of a knot. Instead of going through all the way like I decided to do in the beginning, I'm going to just go through one of them so it can be hidden in between the two layers of fabric. Now that I have it in there, I'm just going to push it down so I can't see it, and now I'm going to start sewing. I'm just going to go over and then go through, pull my needle through, and then I'm just going to keep going all the way around, making sure that my flaps of my fabric are folded down all the time and put together. Okay, so I just finished sewing all the way around, and now I'm going to make my knot at the very end, And now I can take my scrunchie off and put it on.